attached to the email, but when I forwarded it, maybe it didn't. Okay.
Time is 8:32, and we will call to order the work session on September 12th, 2015. And I said time is 8:32. Roll call, please, Officer of the
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. DeGenova?
Here.
Mr. Brush? Mr. Schaefer? Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here.
Can we say his name again?
Yes, say his name again.
Mr. Schaefer?
Here.
Okay. So item 2 on the agenda is the follow-up discussion on the 2015 Community Attitude Study. Survey stuff. So where shall we begin?
Well, we last talked about this when Marty presented the findings of the survey back in July. And at that point, there was discussion about a follow-up discussion, which we're having 2 months later. I know Kent was quite interested in that, as well as others. So what we've done is provided some background information about the survey, some of the key findings, and I had asked in my notes that I sent out on Wednesday if council could do a little homework. And we thought we might I'd suggest starting the meeting with just going around the room and hearing from council members as to what they thought, what they learned from the survey, and what they thought the key takeaways were. Dan is going to record that over here on the whiteboard, and then we can, hopefully that'll get the conversation started.
Okay, and let the records reflect that Andy Brush is now present also. Thank you.
As I do the scribing, make sure I'm writing down the right stuff, and if I'm writing anything down, or put it somebody. But then I'll just quietly write them down.
On the whiteboard, I like that.
That's
It's not exactly a whiteboard.
It's our 20th century whiteboard.
Okay, so we just start with Mr. Jones?
What I took out of the survey is I think people are generally happy. I think they're still for more communication. Economic development was high in there as well. Those are things I took out of it. I guess if I could just add on there, I think that, I mean, without transparency, and if we're all being honest, I think the purpose of that whole survey was try to see the roads were pretty washed out in the middle, or we're high on people's list, in my opinion.
Okay. Lisa?
I was surprised by how much the community recognized our need for economic development. I know that we've talked internally about how much we need it, but the numbers were really staggering in terms of the number of people in the community that recognize that that's the direction that we need to be moving in. So that's what stood out to me. And I was glad that people were mostly happy with the way things are going. Second thing would be just the need for communication and communicating in different modern ways with people.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with everything on what my colleagues had said. I was really set back on the roads. I thought for sure all the calls I get on roads and infrastructure, that wasn't a key factor. Economic development, I thought they would say, we're growing too fast, the schools have to catch up. But other than that, I think everyone the community have a positive attitude. I think we do have to communicate better with them on a weekly, monthly basis, having more meetings and everything, and keeping us abreast too of what's going on out there. I know I try to meet with all my precincts at least four times a year. And Tom just advised me they're gonna have a meeting with Delaware Township Tuesday, and I didn't know anything about it. And that kind of upsets me. You know, they ought to keep it around too. We want to keep them in around. I think it's a two-way, communication is two ways. We have to be able to communicate with our constituents. And I'm getting more involved in Cheshire Crossing and Dornoch and the Glen Ross area out there as it grows. Because there's going to be quite a bit of growth out there. And they just feel like they're second cousins. And I don't know how many of the surveys went to those people. It'd be interesting to see, you know, like in my ward, in the 3rd ward, how many people they contacted and how many of them were out in the different precinct areas. Because I have a variation of people, and I also have the old Kansas schools. And when we go to that meeting on Wednesday, Superintendent Fontange, I haven't met her yet, and see what her feelings are in the future for that area.
Does the final information, Joe brings some good points, does the final information from these guys, does it show the precinct of the phone call where it came from, anything like that?
Yeah, it was split evenly.
Well, it was split between the wards. We're talking about, get an idea.
Oh, within the?
Yeah.
I can check, I'm not
I don't
sure.
think they probably would have that data. I don't know if it's in the report that we got, but
Yeah, I
because
think
they
it
pulled
was.
the information from voter records,
Yeah.
I would imagine that's the report that they've generated.
Because I think Joe brought up a good point.
Because I have different personalities in different areas in my ward, and they have different logical thoughts and their perspectives, you know, on what's going on. I have a cemetery too, that's kind of a dead issue.
But he's here all.
Don't forget to take the witcher.
Okay, Mr. Brush.
I think that, as Chris stated, one of the things I found most surprising was the apparent lack of interest in the condition of the roads. I think that, you know, we have a tendency to think of that as a real problem, and it's not that it isn't a problem, but, you know, it doesn't really seem that there's a high level of dissatisfaction. It seems like as long as we can continue more or less on the path that we're on with road maintenance, you know, at least from a citizen satisfaction standpoint, that would seem to be sufficient. I do think that there seemed to be some interest, as I recall, in specific areas of the city and specific road projects. So certainly in Chris's ward, I think there would be interest in Merritt Parkway. In my ward, I think there would be interest in, you know, taking the next step point, whatever that step is going to be. I think we're doing. So I think that was surprising. I was also, as Lisa said, I was surprised by the level of awareness that the public has about the importance of economic development. And so I think it's definitely important that we continue to pursue that and to make the most wise and effective investments in economic development that we can make.
I wonder if that comes from people actually wanting to work here since they live here and they like it.
Yeah, I would suspect so. And I think all of these problems are, I don't want to say problems, all these issues are interconnected. You know, if we have another, the city's going to continue growing, obviously to a certain point. I think our comprehensive plan suggests a final equilibrium population somewhere in the mid 40,000s or 50,000. So that's, you know, another 25% or so, 30% on top of what we currently have in terms of residents. And I think that the type of growth that we have will really influence the amount of traffic that we have and the extent to which traffic becomes more of a problem in the next 10 or 15 years. Discussion about this actually after the Finance Committee, kind of an impromptu discussion about traffic issues. And what we really want to avoid is getting a reputation for having bad traffic. And we want to avoid having traffic at rush hour that, takes, I mean, there is a rush hour in Delaware now. There wasn't 10 or 15 years ago, at least not to the extent that we have today. So we want to avoid getting a reputation for being a place that's hard to get in and out of, because that's not going to make us very attractive to businesses. However, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't or can't grow. I think it just means that we need to be pursuing growth. And if we have the type of growth that I think we're all hoping for in the industrial park and the Sawmill Parkway corridor, what I think could happen is that some of the people out in the kind of Lantern Chase area, perhaps instead of coming all the way across town to get out to the interstate or 23 so they could go work in Columbus, they might instead be commuting via Hub Road to something in the industrial park. So I think that if we can find the right type of businesses to attract, then we can sustain more growth, because the type of trips that are already being made by our residents will change. And the type of trips that will be made by new residents will be different than what's being made now. So another 10,000 residents does not necessarily mean another 30% more cars driving the same routes that are being driven today. So I think that very roundabout response to your comment, Carolyn, but I think that the extent to which we can court the right type of economic development that will create jobs that are appealing to existing and future residents, I think that that's a very good thing. I think a lot of the, frankly, a lot of the jobs we have out in the industrial park today are, lower skill, kind of blue collar type jobs. I think of AHP as a great example. They're obviously a great business to have here in Delaware. We're very happy with the investment and continuing investment that they've made in our city. But if I had to guess, I would imagine that a lot of their employees are probably coming from Marion, Marysville, et cetera, and a lot of workers in Delaware are continuing to work some of the higher skilled, more white collar type jobs in Columbus and in the southern Delaware County. And so I think that our ability to control traffic problems, and not really road maintenance, but the need for new road connections, I think the ability to control those needs is going to be somewhat dictated by the success or failure of our economic development efforts, and not just success or failure as measured by new tax revenue or jobs created, but specifically the type of jobs that we're creating and whether those jobs are kind of an appropriate match for the quality and skills of the workers that are living in Delaware, regardless of where they're currently employed.
Mm-hmm. What did you tell me the last census was for the population?
We're almost 39,
Yeah,
38,
so-
39. Yeah.
You said in 10 years we'll be to 40, we're almost there.
Well, yeah.
Mr. Schaefer?
Thank you. Without repeating a lot of what everybody else said, I think, I still think that citizens are concerned about, in addition to economic development, they're concerned about the vibrancy of downtown, lack of available parking, traffic congestion. Those are still issues. And as Andy mentioned, they're only going to continue to become more important as time goes on. I think that the question for us is, do we want to start being proactive about those issues now, anticipating that the need is there and that there's at least some community support that will probably hopefully continue to grow if we do our job right? Or do we want to wait until all of a sudden this is a difficult place to now we're 3-4 years out from solutions, which is only going to slow down our economic development, especially in the downtown area, and it's going to slow down the vibrancy of downtown. So I think this is an opportunity for us to start thinking now about what are we going to do about parking capacity? What are we going to do about what if we time the signals? I mean, you don't have to build new roads to get the signal, so we're not stopping at every red light every time we go through town. I think there's some things that we can take away from this that have citizen support that we all do. We know our issues and going to continue to be issues as hopefully grow moving forward. So to me, those are the standout issues that I'd like to see us talk about and start thinking about.
Okay.
So I guess maybe I read this survey different from the rest of you, most of you. When I looked at question 11 about how satisfied you are, and you start to look down through there and look at the somewhat dissatisfied, very dissatisfied, you find out that the highest level of dissatisfaction, 49% of the people said they were dissatisfied with traffic congestion. Followed by 45% saying parking, 32% traffic, 29% white collar jobs. And then it goes down from there. To say that and reinforce what's already been said, traffic management is like pain management. You don't wait until you're dying to take a pill. You have to get in front of it. And if we choose to continue to be reactive, we'll never get in front of it. We need to be proactive and get our resources aligned such that we don't get that South Hamilton Road type of image of, I don't want to go there because traffic is a mess, or something like that. We need to be in front of this. So that was my takeaway.
Okay. Most of you said, but most of the economic development, but then the connectivity because of not being able to get around in the city and the parking. I know Tom and I talked last week about getting hold of someone who was interested once before in doing a parking garage here and find out why he chose not to do it and get her perspective, because I think we're going to have to do one, whether we like it or not. We're going to have to do one someplace.
Who was that?
Well, I actually met with the realtor and he brought, did he bring the guy with him? Sean was in the room.
I can't remember his name,
Yeah.
but he was an investor.
Well, I don't care who specifically it was, but it was someone looking to do a for-profit parking garage here.
Well, they definitely private, subsidized in some way.
Okay.
They wanted to build it where our parking lot is here on William Street. They wanted to lease it from us, that lot. But then all of a sudden, he just said he could make the numbers work, so we want to find out how far off they were.
That's a problem oftentimes with parking garages, and I don't disagree that may be what we need. I'm kind of thinking, and I haven't done enough research to know what this is all about, but there's got to be consultants up there that deal with cities solving parking problems.
Right.
So the parking garage is one thing we might do, but I think that we might want to look into what that might cost us to bring a consultant in, to look at our options and say, here's the options that you have, here's the likely cost. Then we're in a better position to start deciding what we want to do. Now, of course, it's all depending on how much that's going to cost. But if we can get that done at a reasonable rate, I think that would give us some really good information about that issue. And my guess is our staff probably already knows what it would cost us to signalize, computerize the lights, right? We have So, I mean, those two things alone could make a huge difference. I mean, we know about connector roads and the larger picture stuff, but
I just wanted to reach out to this person because he's built garages before.
absolutely.
There's got to be a reason he chose not to,
Absolutely.
and I just want to know what that reason was before we spend more money on a consultant.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, my research into that and stuff, I'm still hardly an expert, but the average cost per space to construct a garage is between $15,000 and $30,000. And generally speaking, the larger the garage and the more rectangular shape of it, the cheaper per space it would be. And so I think that we'd be in a situation where, I mean, if you're talking about building a garage that's going to take up a quarter of a city block in Columbus and be 6 or 8 stories tall, it's probably going to be closer to 15,000 space. And also the cost to pay to park there for a day is a lot higher than it is here. So the economic viability in a denser urban environment like that is more apparent. Whereas here, I think most of the places where in some sort of bizarre shape, which is going to drive up the design cost and the construction cost, and just kind of limit the number of spaces you can get and still be able to move around within the garage. And it's also only going to be so large because you can't build, a 6-story parking garage here. It just wouldn't. It probably wouldn't make sense economically to begin with, but it also would not really make sense aesthetically. I don't think we'd get through planning commission and HPC and council and everything. So that would kind of be my suspicion. Although depending on when they looked at it, if they looked at it.
Since you've been here, so.
It was actually fall.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the idea is to find out, we've done a parking study, planning commission did it with planning staff, and we've identified all the available parking spaces in the downtown. I think my concern is that looking forward, if we are going to make the downtown even more vibrant, if we had a bank that wanted to move in the city and put their headquarters here, and they had 400 employees, I think we'd be very challenged right now to be able to do that. And so I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'd like to see that happen, but I think we need to be prepared to address that, the quantity of parking, so we don't get to a point where we're at an impasse because we just don't have the available parking. I think we've got a lot of surface parking and a lot of on-street parking. It's the large structures that and maybe that's partly what the county is going to be working on when they do the courthaus. So, but it
Well,
makes
that's what I
sense to
thought. I thought that
consult
would
the
be
experts.
a viable time to do it
Could
with the county. And I mentioned that whenever they're building, that they should build a larger parking garage for the downtown area. Another one we can partner with, and I don't know if we had any conversation on, is Ohio Wesleyan. And
Joey, they can't, you're not picking up on the
You've got it.
recorders on, so.
Ohio Wesleyan, and they're in need of parking also. That's always been a problem in time I've been on council on street parking. If they could establish an area, and I always thought the shopping center right down here from Egg Hall, that area, next to the hardware, where the hardware area, that would be an area for a parking garage also. Then the merchants downtown can use it also. We've had a lot of discussion in the past 20 years on parking garages and parking downtown.
So in the strategic plan, which we can show you in a couple of minutes here, there is a section in there that talks about parking. There's the priority needs to probably be changed as a result of the discussion today, but that's something that could be one of the takeaways from this meeting, is that we need to put more emphasis on that, both consulting with some of the private sector folks and then taking a look at some of the experts out there who might assist us.
Since the, and this is a question for Bruce, I guess that's okay. Since we've changed the ticket prices, have we seen much more turnover? I mean, how's it been?
Well, we definitely have them flocking in for the monthly permits, so.
Do you? Okay.
We did well there, yeah. We're actually selling out on permits and people are lining up to buy them ahead of time, which is a good effect.
Good, okay.
Some of the other stuff, we're still seeing some chronic violators, but probably fewer. We have a couple that are getting close to wearing the blue. I'd rather not, quite frankly, but I think the changes at first blush had a good effect.
I had a business owner ask me if the 2-hour limit is too short. Should it be 3? They said, if you want to go to the movies and go get something to eat, you can't do it.
That's a
without
constant
paying.
struggle though, because like there's shops downtown that require quicker turnover, like
I know.
a coffee shop and cigar shop. So it's, you push one way, you're gonna pull the other.
I know.
So 2 hours seems to be.
Average.
Well, most of the meter spots are 3 hours.
They were looking on the streets.
Yeah, and there's some half-hour spots. We try, I think there's about a half-hour spot on every block. We try and position where those quick hitter stores are, just on request, but it's constant struggle.
I told her to bring it back. I did.
I think one of the things that I took away was that we're not in crisis mode in anything, which is great. But when 28% of the respondents say building new road connections is one of the important, one of their top 2 choices, that's 28% today. You don't want to let that grow. How we address that, really the challenge, obviously, when you look at resources. I mean, we're talking about building new road connections, and they're city road connections, not partnering with the state on projects that Morpsey might participate in. Those require our resources, our dollars. And that's, again, getting back to the strategic plan. There's an element in there that talks about funding mechanism, what the options might be in that regard. But we don't want to get a reputation that we have these connections that we know would be important, but we can't figure out a way to make them work. And so that's important. But repairing and repaving more streets, it was 28%. I think we do a pretty good job of getting the major streets resurfaced, and I think that is That's probably one of the reasons we don't have more people running back saying it's making that a higher priority. But and signal timing obviously is up there. But I do think that those big, and those were the initiatives City Council had asked us to ask Marty to ask the public. The challenge is how do you figure out how you address those things, because they're expensive, big ticket dollar items. And so.
The average connectivity like on Merrick is what, 2 million?
Yeah, we're right now, we have that information that's coming in right now. I could put Bill on the spot. It's about 2.
America is like a $2 to $3 million
Yeah.
project. Depends on how you connect it to a road. Same with the Valley Side connector. You know, it's hard, there's no real average cost because the projects are pretty different, but as Tom said, look at current updated estimates on how those type of projects, so you have a good feel for, you know, what kind of investment on projects. And also, the traffic space will be to see what kind of bang for the buck you get. Whether it's been $2 million on America or $2 million on connecting 23 down the Stratford Road, might be really significantly different how much traffic it manages. That information is forthcoming over the next several weeks or so.
Are you going to give us an update on all the streets and roads that, when they're going to be done? Yeah, that'd be good, because I get a lot of calls on cut through streets and Liberty, Slack, Cotswold, Somerset.
You having fun, Dan?
I am.
Good.
Okay, now kind of colors out there. To answer your question, I'm taking what you said, trying to kind of pull out what you see as action items, so as we get to the end of this, we'll have some kind of plan. Ones that I call them sidebars, that's written on the side, but so far I've got recognizing location of respondents, just so we're aware of where some of the comments came from. We are reaching out. I think we know that, but to confirm that. The demographics of our workforce, I think, I'm not exactly sure from my discussion with Frederick and Don that they are all coming from outside, because it seems like there's a lot of Delaware citizens work out there. It'd be great to confirm that with them, just with them with other businesses. I think that's an action item. Working on the comp plan to understand, I think this was your discussion about the type of growth, who lives here in the workforce, and is avoiding rush hour, focus on appropriate growth. Hire a consultant for parking analysis and action plan, and coordinate with their own businesses and Ohio residents regarding parking. And also make sure we revisit our strategic plan and probably put some critical path components, evaluate our current goals, objectives, and tasks, and then put on some critical path items to focus on the things that you all recognize today as what we want to do with that strategic plan. Kind of quickly revisit that. And I think Bill, in your discussion on the roads, finish up their transportation plan, so we have the costs and components of all the different connectivity issues. And Joey just mentioned updating the PCI study to give a good feel for our road conditions. Those are what I currently have for action item kind of things so we can end the meeting.
So Bill, as part of that transportation plan, will that like officially identify like the biggest connectivity issues, whether it's Merritt Point, Valley Side?
I think
Bill, could you come to this is being live streamed, so it's helpful if you come to the podium here.
We should give them a light.
Yeah, a couple parts to that question. The answer is yes, that we'll have all the information available and updated. What is the priority is kind of what we're talking about right now. It's not going to tell you what your priorities are. It's going to tell you what costs are, what the top projects are. The priorities haven't changed from what this body's been talking about and discussing for years. We know Merrick's important. We know the Point's important. We know keeping our major highway resurface is important. But in terms of like the new linkages and network connections, you'll have better information in terms of a geometric layout that our consultant says is feasible, what the cost in current dollars that would be, and also through Morpsey's work, what the traffic impact would be. In other words, if Merrick was constructed, what does that do to traffic on West Central Avenue? we'll have that type of information ahead of, before us to be able to guide us a little bit in terms of what would be the benefits of constructing some of these different issues, also what the cost would be. And the larger part of the whole transportation also is it's updating. Do we need to be doing more with signage and striping? What does it take to get our signals coordinated? Should we be doing better guardrail? We've had some comments about we need more guardrail, crash barrier in places. We'll try to have updated information on all those major categories. So we'll look at transportation and see what kind of costs are involved in where investments could be or should be if we increase them at all from the current levels. Then some specific information. I've been actually in contact with George a little bit, updating him on the point. I think we're all aware that the point is the queues are getting longer and longer, and there's two schools of thought. I like the one about you can predict easily what's going to happen unaddressed. It's going to get worse. But when's the right time to pull a trigger on these things? Well, some of the information on the point where we just finished this week of some more in-depth field counting of the information so we can upgrade our model, recalibrate it, and then be able to predict with you what do we see is going to happen if we don't add capacity out there. What's the future going to be like? And there's many schools of thought holding out in the public. One is, do you spend $15 million because it's inconvenient for an hour, or it takes you 10 minutes to go through there instead of 2 minutes to go through there? How much do you spend for inconvenience? When is the point when you do that? And we're trying to identify the other issues on the east side that's not just the railroad bridge, but Lake Street and Central seems to be one of the hang-up points also going westbound. So we're trying to put all that together on a specific project like that to get you good information, because that's certainly a high dollar that could eat up every bit of additional funding we have to resolve that one issue. When do we get on top of resurfacing? If it's not enough of an issue today, but we fall off that curve in 3 or 4 more years and it becomes much more of an issue to the public, but then the expense of addressing it then is maybe 30 or 40% higher than it would be today if we started that kind of information. So I'd hope that when we present all this together, we'd be able to have some specific discussions on just those issues and what it means, so you have the best information to make some decisions and set some direction for the future. And that's what the intention would be, is trying to wrapping all that up. This year was our goal. I'm not sure we're going to have formal bound documents by the time the budget hits us, but the goal is that information. It's a forever increasing problem, what to do with traffic and our roads and our associated infrastructure. So we want to make sure we have that information perpetually updated and available to you to help guide decisions.
Interestingly, in the 2007 survey that we did, we asked specific questions about particular areas in the city. One of them was the point. Is point congestion an issue for you? And 81% said it was, from somewhat important to very important to essential. It's kind of split 3 ways that way. And as a result, we upgraded in 2009. We undertook I think if you were to ask the same question today, you'd probably get the same results. The difference is we don't have the ability to do anything more with the timing and lane configurations and geometry. And geometry is what we have to change now, which is that railroad bridge. And that's why when you look at the point, I think we should look at the corridor, the whole central William Street corridor from 23 going east all the way really out to the to the corporate limits. And that's a multi-million-dollar project, which is really state, federal, county. And I meant, this is one of the conversations we had with the finance committee the other night. We're going to start competing for those MORPC dollars next year. And if we can tee up a comprehensive project that addresses that, I think we've got a decent shot at it. But again, that's a multi-year, you can get it approved in 2018, but it may not commence until 2022. If we even get it on the list, then it's just lobbying to get it moved up. So, but that's what this information is going to tell us. Because I don't think we've had a chance to share with council yet the details of the bridge replacement study, because we're getting the railroad right now is reviewing for them to review the study that we did on the railroad bridge.
Right, and that we're not sure when Norfolk will have our official response back. I've kept you posted that we're looking at different configurations for replacing that bridge. Somewhat as anticipated, the railroad has come back and said, we only want a conventional proven structure. We're not interested in innovation that much because it has high liability on their side. So they like to see a new bridge built either east or a new bridge built west of the existing bridge and then take the old bridge out. I think we somewhat anticipated that. We did look at some alternative type of constructions and in some of our discussions with them. So again, I think we anticipated that railroad likes traditional proven infrastructure, and I can understand that because they don't have alternatives if a line goes down. And so I think that information will be back, and the whole reason we're doing that is so we've gone through the step of with the railroad. So as we apply for federal dollars or try to seek partners, we can say, yes, we looked at all these things, and this really is the solution that we need to be moving towards. We're just trying to eliminate some of the distractions as you move towards a solution out at the point, so we can get focused and move forward on that. And whether we move forward as we do it ourselves or we find partners, it takes us 2 years or it takes us 20 years, at least we'll have a direction on it. Just backing up, the reason why we're working on the model is I want the public and the council to be able to understand the ramifications of what delaying 2 more years and 4 more years and 6 more years means. Because we could be very happy about getting enough money to rebuild this thing in 8 years from now, but the traffic might be intolerable for 4 or 5 hours out of the day until that point. And that may not be a viable solution at that point. We may say we got to find a different way to do it sooner. So it's a matter of getting good updated information and our best estimates. I would say based on our work back in 2008, 2009, I think our predictions, our model predicted almost exactly the situation we see out there right now. Within a year, very, very close. So we're pretty determined to recalibrate this model and get it to you so you have a really good feel for what does this mean under the current circumstance of traffic growth and what can we expect over the next 2 or 3 years out there.
I remember when you brought us that model, must have been 2008. I thought you were crazy, it would never work. And I was amazed how well it worked. But you also told us it was possibly 10 years.
Yeah, we said that
That's what we were hoping.
yeah, with low growth at the time when we were going into that recession, but things have definitely picked back up. And again, I kind of measure that by the construction activity. You've seen the stone trucks and cement rolling through town. It's good for the economy, but it's also definitely an indicator of traffic. And that's why we've recounted the traffic. And we believe we're probably on the lower end. We thought anywhere from 6, 7 years to 10 years. We're in the low end of that because traffic has absolutely increased through town. And certain things that are occurring out at 36 and 71 have us concerned. That's going to bring traffic through our community that's really not doing business within our community.
Bill, when you give us that study, could you also talk to us about costs to get our lights timed, signalized? So
Sure, yes.
Well, that was something I was going to mention, which is that I think that some of these major infrastructure projects are not really worth doing until we address the light computerization issue. Because let's just say hypothetically that we got some sort of state or federal grant to replace that bridge and it was going to be done next summer. Absent a more global signalization approach, what would happen is traffic probably from the point into 23 or so on both William Street and Central significantly worse, because one of the things that the congestion at the point does do that's probably not so bad is that it meters the rate at which traffic can enter the city. And so unless every subsequent intersection is equipped to handle the increased volume of traffic, you're just going to have the same delay. You're just going to be waiting at a different location you were previously waiting.
That's a good point.
I think that's a critical piece. Absolutely. So, you mentioned the 2007 survey. Traffic congestion was about the same level of concern in 2007 as it is now. So it's not, when people, I think, recognize we've kept pace with some of it.
Right, but the city's grown, with 36% more than that last 10 years.
The main corridors are where we're really seeing the biggest impact right now because we have an added lane capacity really anywhere. We've improved intersections and interchanges to move things around a little more efficiently at certain network nodes. But in terms of our main lane capacity, and that's the same thing at the point, and Andrew's point is dead on accurate, that we can resolve one and then the domino effect is going to happen. And we definitely recognize that more than anywhere on the east side, that there's multiple issues on there from not just lane capacity, intersection efficiency. Any one of the solutions we're looking at, we're going to need to be open-minded to things like restricting parking or reducing or eliminating parking in certain areas, prohibiting turning movements in order to improve efficiency, or we're going to be building 4-lane and 5-lane sections and wiping out properties and businesses to accommodate it in an alternate way. There's not a lot of magic about getting your traffic to flow. Either you build really wide roads or you use narrow roads and you start adding restrictions to how the public can use those roads. Those are the two ways to move traffic more efficiently. We want to make sure we can give all those options out there and be able to discuss them in far more detail and understand the pros and cons and ramifications of those.
So can we make the Kroger trucks go to 71 now?
Unfortunately, they're going to, a lot of them are going to Toledo,
I know.
and again, back to economic development, that becomes a time issue for Kroger at some point, just the amount of time it takes. I mean, a lot of that traffic is their traffic, so that's something that they would be a business that we would approach in terms of getting support for anything we do out there, and that's I think they would see it in their interest.
Yeah, well, I think what Tom just said reminded me of something that Bill said earlier that I wanted to amend, which is that Bill, referred to some of these issues as a convenience issue. And to a certain extent, it is a convenience issue, but after a certain point, it really becomes an economic development hindrance. Because, if you're sitting at a light or at an intersection waiting in line for 10 minutes instead of 2, that's inconvenient for an individual, but when you look at that on an aggregate basis, that's a significant amount of wasted time every day. I mean, if you have X number of 1,000 cars going through the intersection in a day and they're all waiting for 8 minutes longer than they would be with, improvements made or whatever, if you multiply that out, you might be wasting months of person time, so to speak, each day. So I think that is something to consider. Because I think it is something that businesses look at.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially anything that's dealing with logistics or distribution, where a significant amount of their labor cost is coming from, driving and moving goods around. If it's taking significantly longer in one community than another, it's cheaper to do business in the community where it doesn't take as long to move around.
I just had a couple other non-related points to this from the survey, though. 33% of the people in the survey said they still get their news from the Delaware Gazette. We've talked a lot about our Facebook page, and 70% said they had a third of those people are on our Facebook page. So we really need to think in terms of how we reach out to citizens, that you've still got a large number of people, that a third of them that are getting their news from the Delaware Gazette.
Staff floors.
Well,
I know.
I'm just saying, though, it's good to be aware of those kinds of things, because as we attempt to reach out to people, the average age of the survey was 45, or half the population is under 45, but their average residency is 19 years. These are people who, a lot of them have been here a long time and are probably going to anticipate being here a long time. So.
One of the things that Lee mentioned in a recent email was, I don't know if it was this past week or the week before, that we reached some certain milestone where we had a certain number of Twitter followers and a certain number of Facebook followers. And he mentioned that all of those Facebook followers were gained through, without the use of ads, and it was entirely organic growth, which is good, but Facebook ads are extremely cheap. And if that was something that at some point his office wanted to throw, $1,000 at over the course of 6 months or something, that might help improve some of our subscriber numbers, and that would be significantly cheaper than just about any other type of public outreach we can do. So that's something we might want to consider at some point.
Was the milestone?
That was we Past 3,000 on Twitter and 6,000 on Facebook within the last 2 weeks.
No, I think it's just the air. Yeah.
Look, I don't see it.
Well, we have, I don't know if it's necessary to show the strategic, and these things we're talking about are in there. I think what we need to do is bring back kind of a timeline as to when we're going to have these key reports back to you, whether it's the report that Bill is referring to, whether it's something that regarding parking. I think we would bring back that timeline.
Right, yeah, definitely. You know, just one.
Can you, everybody, remember, just try to pull your mic towards you if you're leaning back.
One last point, though, when it comes to road and road capacity and options also, that I don't think, and although Bill can give what a given project may cost, we also then have to know that, you know, you want to take a 2-lane road and make it a 5-lane road, you know, what's our annual cost to maintain that, you know, ongoing operating costs, which we're already constrained by. You know, our own staff is telling us, and you can drive our roads and see that we can't maintain what we have today. So even if we had, you know, we don't want to get in the catch-22 situation of capitalizing some projects, getting dedicated funding to create some projects, and then, oh, by the way, we didn't pay for the money to maintain them. So, you know, sometimes, and to that point, you know, you can kind of look more towards a green initiative and looking at how do you increase your resource utilization on what you have today versus just adding more capacity. You know, so that in the long term would help us control our operating costs. And I think that's significant because we can't maintain what we have today, in my opinion.
Well, I think kind of going back, mentioned in the first round of comments, one of the things that the survey told us is that our residents, for the most part, feel that we actually can maintain what we have today.
Yeah.
78% of people were somewhat or very satisfied with the condition of local streets through subdivisions, and 75% were somewhat or very satisfied with the condition of main roads through Delaware. So I think that certainly we're not maintaining the roads to the standard that Bill would probably like in a perfect world, and that we would probably like in a perfect world. But I think that it was kind of enlightening for me. I really was surprised that those numbers were as high as they were. And it was, you know, I think that the perception is that that's not as much of a problem as we thought it was.
But as a counterpoint to that, though, and if you look at like the PCI reports that were generated last year, and you see that your cost increasing at an increasing rate, you know, it's the old pay me $1 now or pay me $10 in 2 years from now. That's, you know, so although it may look good today, again, it goes back to that pain management perspective. You have to stay in front of it, or else you're always behind the curve.
But also goes back to my comment on precincts and wards is the survey, if it was conducted in an area where it's all new development, they're going to say the roads are great.
Right.
But it's in one that's been here 30, 40 years, and they only did a minority of survey people in that area, then they're going to have a problem. You know, you're not going to get that 75%. It's going to be a lesser number. So I think that's very important that we know how that survey came out in certain areas.
So Tom, do we have and I know we talked about this, and I think in your message you sent out to us, how we're currently, based on kind of what we're looking at as priorities, do we have a matrix there that then shows how we're currently allocating our resources against those, what we've defined as these priorities. So, you know, can we see that, yes, we are today allocating resources in a way that is in line with our priorities, or maybe we need to bring them back into alignment.
Yeah, I would generally say that there's probably a misalignment between what we've identified as priorities just this morning and what our resources are. I think I made that clear in my message for the CIP, that generally we just, and that's not anything new. Is that what you were getting at?
It's not necessarily the total amount of resources, because I think we could all pretty much agree that we're probably underfunded for the most part across several initiatives. But out of that pot of resources that we have, how are we allocating those as percentages and as priorities versus against what we've identified as priorities of, you know, what's significant priorities for us. So, you know, are we spending, I don't know, you know, 38% on X when now it's really a number 12 priority? Something like that. It's a way to correlate,
I think
current spending
with respect to road funding, I think there is. And I think we show it in this, we actually show that in the CIP. With respect to some of the other things, we'd probably have to develop that.
Yeah, we don't have that here, but listening to what you had said, I think envisioning something, you know, you'd almost have to look at, you know, it would be straightforward to say, well, these are our top 10 priorities in rank order, and how much money do we allocate on those? If we could tally that up, how does that compare to all the money we have available? Services that we're going to talk about, you know, our core basic police service, our core fire service are over here. We're kind of segregating those, but of what might be considered other discretionary revenues, how much of that do we have available, and you know, how much is being allocated in these areas? It seems straightforward. A little challenging to kind of match everything up, because one thing links to the other. Sometimes, you know, we would be spending money on roads, but that's facilitating economic development also. But I think that's kind of what you're looking at least some sort of a barometer or some sort of gauge there to at least visualize, our priority flowing through to how we're utilizing some of our discretionary funds.
Right, and beyond just how we're using our monies, but how are we using all of our resources? So, you know, such as, depending on what you're talking about, you know, man hours may be, now granted, you may or may not be able to make a direct correlation between money spent and man hours, but, you know, given, let's say you're talking the parks, and you have 7 different classifications, you can get, you know, 6 guys at this level, or 3 people at this level, or 1 person at this level for the same amount of money, let's say. Like, do we know what our priorities are? And then how are we using those resources? You know, our resources that we're using, let's say man hours to go out and cut grass. You know, we have so many man hours, but we're unable to meet that. So maybe we need to look at, you know, changing around that man hour resource to better meet what we see as our existing priorities.
Right.
But use that across the board. So just not money, but whatever those resources are that the city has to utilize.
I swear I'm going to do this as diplomatically as I can, but we're spinning our wheels ridiculously at this point. Tom, you've had conversations with every one of us individually. We've had conversations with staff. The elephant in the room is whether or not we want to do a levy for road tax or whatever you want to call it. But I think you're looking for somebody to stand up and champion, you know, hey, we're going to do it. I'm not convinced that it needs to be done. Doesn't mean it should or shouldn't, but I think it's your job, staff's job, to come to us and say, this is what we need done, and if we need a big levy, you know, this is what the plan should be, this is what our thoughts are. But this continuously year and a half, 2 years of this, you know, talking to somebody, this, that, it's just spinning our wheels here. So I guess I would just ask if that's what you're looking for, if that's what you want, come back to council with a proposal of what the plan should be, that we think it should be a 10-year or a 4-year, 5-year, 20-year, like, I don't know. If anyone else feels the same way, this is what we're spinning our wheels around about. Nobody wants to come out and say it, but that's what we're talking about. And I know it's, you know, it's not a big secret. I mean, that's what your thoughts
Well,
are.
I mean,
That's
I
what
think, right.
other conversations have been. But just come out and say it. Just say this is how much we need. This is what we need to do. That we don't have the money. This is a plan to get the money. And then we'll talk about that way. But this, you know, roundabout spinning our wheels is just getting old for me.
Me too.
See, I don't see it as spinning our wheels. I think we're really trying to identify. I mean, it's easy to say, I mean, you know, what would that be?
Well, with all due respect, this is your second year. This is my 5th year. We've been talking about this for 5 years. I'm sure, you know, Andy and Lisa and Carolyn have gone, you know, this has been a conversation for a long time now. So that's why I call it spinning the wheels.
Well, I think one way to move beyond spinning the wheels, short of putting the levy on the ballot, right away, is to identify from our conversation this morning, what is it we think we want to accomplish? And in my opinion, that's we want to increase parking capacity. We are pretty clear that signalizing our lights, computerizing and timing our lights would be a big improvement in traffic congestion without adding any roadways. And the third piece is Bill's going to get back to us with information on what the cost and return factors are on increasing road capacity. To me, those are the 3 pieces that kind of go together to address these issues. I think we're a little bit premature of talking about a levy at this point, but if we make those priorities, we start looking at the cost for each of those things, we've got a pretty good handle on what we can do on the levy and where we may see ourselves a year from now. But I think that where we're at right now is the identification of those priorities and making those action items, getting the information we need so that we're not spinning our wheels and talking about the same thing a year from now.
Right.
I suspect that a year from now, we could be in a pretty good position to start moving ahead on some of these things. So that's just my thought.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said. I think you probably put it better than the way I ever do. But you know, we have these meetings and we talk, and it always ends with, oh, there's just not enough money. Oh, we should have more money to do stuff, and then it stops. And then we bring it up again 6 months later, and then in between there, you know, I had breakfast with somebody or somebody else. We all talk about, oh yeah, we have a problem with money. It just keeps going nowhere. That's what I'm saying. So what you said, I think is, so let's identify. Let's put a concrete plan in action, and let's quit talking about these things. Put a thing in action. Whether it's like you said, Ken, just identifying things, but let's do something as opposed to just talking about it and just, you know.
I think that was the whole purpose of today, though, is you pick out a couple things in there that you feel strongly about. And I think we did with economic development and parking, and I think connectivity roads, not necessarily repairing the roads, although I know that's a problem, but the connectivity will help the congestion.
Yeah,
So what do we do to build those roads? I don't know. I don't have that answer.
Right.
So I look for staff and Tom to give me that answer. But
That's what I'm saying.
And that's what we'd come back to.
So I guess what we'd be looking for is, at least this is just my thought for discussion. One, what would it take to bring in a parking consultant that can look at our parking situation and give us options and costs and returns on that? What would it cost us to computerize and time our lights? And I realize that there's probably various ways we can look at that, depending how far out we go and all that. What's that going to cost us? And then when Bill gets back to us with the roads, and we know, to build Merrick, it's costing this, and here's the return on traffic relief, here's what it would cost somewhere else, then we're not going to be able to do it all, but we could say, well, look, we think these 3 connectors or whatever it might be are the ones we really want to push for right now, and we think it's going to get us where we need to be over the next 10 or 15 years, and that's then what we need to move forward with the fund.
when you talk about this timing of the light signalization, are you talking in Delaware? I mean, are you looking at 23, 36, 30? I mean, how far out are you thinking?
Well, I mean, I think that's something that we're going to have to look at the experts to give us a couple options on, but I think at least our main roads coming and going from the city limits to the city limits, because it doesn't make sense to me to time a few lights downtown and the rest of them still don't as Andy mentioned earlier, all you're doing is moving the problem. You pretty much have to have a system of timed lights that work throughout.
I mean, I would say at a minimum, the arterial roads in the whole city.
Right.
Yeah, I think anything less than that, it's not really worth doing.
Right.
I agree.
Just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Because our timing now seems to be 99% of the lights are red 90% of the time, so at least that's the way it seems sometimes when it's busy.
Is that true, Bill?
I know that's not an accurate statistic, it's just that way.
Right.
So the way that
Well, I think
Do
we've
I
got
need
the
to make,
takeaway.
do I need to make a motion that we identify these as priority, or do we just
Well,
want
do we want to give
to?
a time when we would like these done by?
Monday.
Monday?
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
I don't know what's.
I think these are all capital projects that Kent talked about, so I would say that these probably need to be considered as a part of this year's CIP. And I mean, we're not at square one on any of these things. I know we've been talking about some of these projects for a long time, so it doesn't seem to me like it should be too difficult for staff to pull some of these numbers together in relatively short order, within a few weeks or a month maybe.
I'm watching Bill's face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not looking for this to go out to bid and have hard numbers, but we don't have any idea whether this is $250,000 or $3 million. So I mean, we just kind of need an order of magnitude.
Single time. We've talked about this, I presented this for at least 50 years, the past 5 years. So we can give you an idea of what the consultant costs and the hard costs will be on the single time.
Good.
Proves your point.
Just so we know, we are fully coordinated with time, single timing in the community, all singles are, all 60 of them, 61 now. But the last time that work was updated was 1999 when it was installed. We mentioned this before, we need to, every few years, upgrade that. And the equipment we have and the timing is outdated, although we spend a lot of time weekly updating individually, working as best we can to try to keep it up to par. But if, I've talked about this before, we need a large overhaul of the single timing in order to get it up to par with like Mesa and the community. So well set up there, and we'll get some information back on that.
So tell us what that, to do an overall, what that would cost.
Yes.
And then as far as the new road connections, that's the work that's being done now by the consultant, which should be back probably by sometime in November.
In November is their timeline to finish that part of the project.
Yeah, that would then be presented.
And I would also be interested in knowing what kind of costs we might be looking at recently to bring in a parking consultant.
Yes.
Parking capacity, that should be
Yeah.
part of that as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of the timeline, what's a reasonable timeline?
Probably December, sometime in December as part of our budget process. I mean, none of this is really operating, but I think as part of your deliberation on the budget, if to the extent that there's a consultant needed, or we would do it as part of that. So I'd say sometime in December. I'll have a better idea once we get this information that road consultant back. Well, this has been helpful, getting the feedback, and appreciate it.
Does anybody need a break, or can we move on to tomorrow?
Let's move on.
Okay.
It's a big smile for 9:30 on a Saturday morning.
I've had lots of coffee. Yeah, I'm not a morning person. All right, so an entrepreneur officer or an economic development officer, an entrepreneur, and a banker go into a bar, and 6 months later it becomes a microbrew. That's my joke. Yeah. All right.
How much public money was involved in that?
Zero. I'd like to start off by saying, and this is kind of a segue to what you guys just discussed in terms of priorities and the survey. We have done, last year actually, as part of our economic development plan, released a very good labor analysis. So we really do know where our labor force are working, what they're working in, and what we're lacking currently in the city. So I do encourage you, when you get a chance to look at page 7 and 8 of the ED plan, at your leisure. But I do want to just read off some statistics to you. And this was work that was done in a combination of my own experience and market analyses through work with Columbus 2020 and obviously the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which, as you know, that information comes from a variety of sources, U.S. Census, taxation data. So, I mean, it's very accurate information as to where people are working and what they're doing. But in the city of Delaware, our current labor pool, only 12.4% of them are working in manufacturing. It's a pretty small piece of the pie.
I'm sorry, said it to me, 12% are working in manufacturing. Is that based on, what do you mean, based on Delaware residents?
Yes, Delaware labor force, not total residents, just labor force.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that would exclude someone who works outside, lives in Liberty Township and works here. It's just
Correct.
residents who are in the labor force.
Correct, just resident labor force,
All
correct,
right,
thank
now
you.
I'm confused.
So it's everyone in Delaware minus people who aren't working.
Okay.
So to granularize that a little bit, in manufacturing, we have 3,050 jobs. Wow, Tom's watching me. I'm like I'm in 3D or in stereo here. That's pretty cool. How do I look on camera, Tom? Is it good?
Very good.
Oh, I hope so. My gosh, I need that. We have 3,050 jobs. Most of those, as you know, are on Pittsburgh Road. Pittsburgh Drive. Only 1,787 of our current labor force are actually working in manufacturing on Pittsburgh Drive, essentially right now.
What was the number again?
1,787. We have a labor force of over 19,000. Okay. So we're importing right now to fulfill our manufacturing demands 1,263 employees. Okay. So Dan mentioned earlier his conversation with Mr. Fredericks at AHP. You know, that varies, and I've failed to mention that, you know, this data was also backed up by a lot of our business retention expansion visits and talking with HR officers across the city. You know, you hear everything from 50% of their labor force coming from elsewhere to 70, 80% of their labor force coming from elsewhere. And it really kind of depends. And manufacturing is about 50-50. You throw in transportation and warehousing, you're really seeing that number truly skew. We're not a logistics town. We only 802 of our labor force, not residents, but labor force. Well, they are resident labor force. Let me clarify that. Work in warehousing. Okay, so that'd be like Kroger's distribution centers. There's 2,004 distribution jobs in the city right now. So we're actually importing 1,202 distribution jobs, distribution laborers. Okay. If you look at where our gaps are, though, I mean, and this is where I think, you know, our statistics actually are not the same as what came out in the survey. I'm not sure why that is, but I'd like to believe mine are true and Marty's aren't. You know, upwards of 80% of our labor force are leaving town. When I say town, the actual municipal borders for work every day.
So stop right there. So you're saying, so what you just said is 80% of the residents are leaving town?
Yeah.
Okay.
Conversely, we're importing 78% of our needed labor force, mostly in those two areas that I just spoke of.
So what you just said goes back exactly to what Andy said in his opening comments.
Correct. And Andy, I mean, I don't even need to be here. He said everything I wanted to say, quite honestly. Thank you, Andy.
So really quickly, where did your data come from? I guess you told us the BLS and some other sources. I guess I would be interested for you to get in touch with Marty and compare your methodology and determine what the source of some of these discrepancies is, whether it's well, for example, I know that one of the things he looked at was when he talked about people leaving the city, it was leaving the zip code and not the actual corporate boundaries. So
exactly.
Things along those lines, I'd be curious to know.
And that's exactly true, Andy. And I think that's where most of the deviation comes from. Some of our actual labor data came from as a region, Columbus 2020 is, we are partner in their paying partner. They hired a site consultant firm to actually come in and do a full-fledged labor force analysis of our region, our 13-county region, last year. And that provided us amazing labor pool data that backed up. I mean, it was very, very similar to what we saw from BLS and so on and so forth in census. So it really confirms one piece of data, confirms the other, I guess. Three areas where we're really seeing gaps right now, though, and this goes right into the Entrepreneur Center. I promise I'll get there. Professional and scientific is number one. We're a net exporter of 1,064 professional, scientific, and technical service jobs. That's not IT. Don't confuse those, because there is a separate IT, but alone, just professional, scientific, and technical service, we're exporting a lot of our labor pool.
So that would include engineering, R&D.
Correct.
Healthcare. Correct.
Healthcare is a separate, Tom. Good question, though. Yeah, healthcare is separate, and I can tell you what that is. Healthcare, we're importing actually 841 employees in healthcare. So we actually have an excess of healthcare jobs right now. And that's what this really means is you either have an excess of jobs or you have a gap where you need jobs to let your current labor pool work in those areas. So labors right now is finance and insurance. A lot of people here obviously probably work at Chase Bank right down the road, right? 791 of those are leaving our city limits every day to work someplace else in finance or insurance. And then the other one was interesting. It's actually wholesale trade, which covers a lot of things, exporting, importing. A company like Toolmatics is actually a wholesale trade type company, not a manufacturer. So they're wholesaling manufacturing tooling to people like Honda and whatnot, so they can actually build the cars, but it's a wholesale firm. But that's the third area, largest area where we're actually exporting. My point is, I mean, if you really look at those things, there's some real opportunities for us as a community to truly fulfill the needs of what our residents said in the survey. And I think, what you really saw in there is they're saying they want white collar jobs, right? And that's really where the Entrepreneur Center comes in. As Tom said earlier, or actually I think it was in a memo, we don't have 270 coming through here. Wish we did, although that has disadvantages too, right? But we don't have that freeway visibility that your Cardinal Healthcare or your Verizon or companies of that nature want. So we can't do that elephant hunting of trying to bring those major headquarter type facilities in here. What we can do is what we've actually done very well on the manufacturing side, though, is bring in those small companies and those entrepreneurs that are going to grow here and build white collar jobs. And one that I think we can be most proud of in the most recent history is MediU, and Dan started that project. We finished it off when I get here. That company's up to 60 employees right now, and he's looking at branching off and starting another company because entrepreneurs do that. That's what they do well, is they start other companies. He'll hire another 25, 50, 60 more in that company. So our opportunity there is to work with our current assets that Gary Evans mentioned in the last retreat. You have Ohio Wesleyan in your backyard, 17th in the nation in entrepreneurship, first in the state. That's the #1 entrepreneurial school in the state of Ohio right now. And when it measures the number of entrepreneurs that are actually graduating from the school. Good question, Andy.
That was my question, because I think that is the only meaningful metric, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the source was it Forbes?
Forbes magazine did the ranking, correct? Yeah. So pretty credible.
Do you have a statistic on how many of their employees live in the city versus out?
I think you'll find a lot. I mean, we're actually kind of skewed on the educational front.
I have education, government, and retired.
Yeah, we have to look at here. We have a lot of education people living in the,
We have a lot living outside too because of homes.
correct. But, what this is about, an entrepreneur center, is trying to provide the appropriate resources, the culture, the relationships for these things to be done here. And this doesn't just mean you're only working on technology-based companies, you're only working on this, you're only working on that. It's really a broader spectrum of trying to make sure anybody who wants to do business in the city of Delaware, and that does include your major employers. If a company of 150 wants to look here, they need similar resources, quite honestly, than that person that's hiring 5, 10, 25. This is an opportunity for us to create a professional place for our resource providers to call home, for us to call home, put on our best face, our best foot forward, trying to attract and be a magnet for people with ideas and create that promise of relationships, resources, and culture, quite honestly. Is that we've already lost several companies in the two and a half years I've been here because we don't have a facility like this. Vantage Point Logistics, I'll name as one. This was a tech firm that created some software that allowed for efficiencies in distribution for higher education and healthcare. They were here with me. We worked with them probably for 6 months. Eventually, they went with actually one of our resource partners to what was Tech Columbus, now is Rev 1. They're currently actually located in Rev 1's facilities. Once you're in that type of environment and you've got the resources and whatnot that they perceive are coming actually from that community where it's located, Columbus, they're more likely to stay there once they've graduated from that environment.
So are you saying that that company was already here?
Yes.
And then it would expand?
Well, no, they had not actually opened their doors, if you will.
So they were developing.
Yeah, they were starting their idea, trying to figure out where they were going to get the most resources. And
Where were they working out of at that time?
their homes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the reason they chose the, let's say, Rev 1? What was the reason?
One, and this is something that we go back and forth on, is space.
We didn't have a center.
Yeah, they actually were looking for low-cost overhead office space that also had that culture, educational, and having resource providers on site that could hold their hands on a daily basis and be able to share ideas and on a regular basis. If you look at the United States right now, there are about 1,900 entrepreneur centers, incubators, and accelerators. Do we want to be the community that hasn't taken the step forward, being that we have an asset, like I mentioned with OWU, being that we have this really awesome educated labor force? Do we want to be the community that hasn't actually invested in something that the rest of the country has really seen as being a high impact opportunity? Economic development's changed. The recession really truly changed what we all do. And when you look at that 500 employee operation that we achieved before the recession, that's a 1 in 1,000 opportunity. You can spin your wheels, use a phrase that was used earlier, a term, a lot on trying to do that, spend a lot of money to try to do that. Or you can spend money in trying to grow your own or grow those in the surrounding area, because I think this is actually an opportunity to be a regional, especially Delaware County. If you look at the Delaware County statistics, you're even much greater on this professional, white-collar labor force statistics than even the city of Delaware is, right? So we have the opportunity not just to serve the city of Delaware, but actually the entire county, and then get those companies in our municipal boundaries. But so many opportunities here, but there is a cost to it. I mean, especially when you're looking at facility. We have a beautiful facility next to us, great bones, but for just the square footage, about 1,900 square foot of what we would utilize for an entrepreneur center, you're probably looking at over $300,000 just to get that, renovate it, and get it up to speed and be able to utilize it. if you're going to use the rest of the building for building planning zoning, you're probably looking at, $750,000 to get the building into a good professional usable state. Where's that money come from? Well, I think it really truly comes from partnerships. And we have several opportunities for that. One, there's a way that we can take and put that building under different ownership. If you'd like, it could be owned by a CIC, a port authority, which would allow public and private funds to intermingle to get the job done, to renovate the building, to run the building on a daily basis, provide the necessary financial resources to not be an entire burden on the municipality.
And I'm sorry, we are talking about the Gazette building?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. So basically, what would a tool like that allow you to do? Allow you to bring in partners like High Wesleyan University, allow you to bring in the county, the city,
Chamber.
the chamber, the private citizens of industrial people in the city, business leaders here, to all invest in a common goal. And we can follow up with this meeting with. I had a whole host of PDF files of different entrepreneur centers across the country that I developed for you, and I think the one that I think if I were you, I'd probably look at closely is Lima, Allen County. It essentially is structured very similar to what we're talking about here, and as everybody knows about it, Lima, they're not doing as well as we are. So this wasn't a question of should we do it. It was a critical thing for them to turn around their economy. We're in a much better situation, obviously. But
Are those documents that you could resend again?
no, we'll send them out, Chris.
Oh,
We
okay.
were. It was
I
just
don't remember seeing them.
no. It's just so much information. I figured we'd do this presentation and follow up.
Yeah.
And I think picking up on what Sean says, a field trip up to one of these, perhaps Lima. You had mentioned you had a look up like Lima. Is that?
Just Lima's.
They've
If anybody's watching from Lima, I apologize, but Lima's such a depressed area.
I know Lima has the tank factory. I don't even know
Yeah.
But interestingly, in those situations, you tend to get that people cooperate more easily.
Desperation
Yeah.
creates a lot of opportunity for people to work together, doesn't it? But we're not in a desperate measure, but I think this is still a huge opportunity for us, and that is a model that they're doing that's working. It is a multi-collaborative model. They created a nonprofit to own the facility, to manage it on a daily basis, and the funding's coming from a variety of resources to make that work. It's just not the county or the city. So I think it's a cool model to look at, and there's a couple others out there. But I'm not going to read over the document that Tom sent out. I know he sent it again here this week. But this is really truly about trying to provide more structured and better resources to an entrepreneur. It's about providing a physical location where people can gather, congregate, build relationships, build a culture, share ideas, and become that economic development or entrepreneur community that we all talk about. It's
So let me
also
just jump in real quickly. Just how does that distinguish from the traditional incubator?
incubators are. They're long-term, low overhead rental spaces. And then there's the accelerator, which is kind of a combination of the two. And this would be, our model would probably be more of an accelerator because you're providing all the educational resources, the resource providers, and the know-how, but you're also providing them possibly, if we had enough space on a shorter term basis. So the graduation time would be a much shorter period. An incubator, they could be in there for 3 years. An accelerator, they're there for 6 months.
Sean, let me ask you this. And I support this 100%. You know that, and I've said that publicly. Here's what I can't get my hands around, and I guess I need your expertise to help me understand this. So we have a entrepreneurial center. Obviously, the long-term goal here is for business to start up and stay in Delaware. It's tax revenue for the city. That's the ultimate goal of what this is. So the company starts their entrepreneurial center, and then they get to the point that they're going to expand. So at that point, they have to either stay in Delaware or leave. How are we keeping them in Delaware then? How are we keeping them in Delaware? I mean, so we developed them, we've watered them, we've watched them grow. And then how do we keep them here as opposed to going to Columbus or anyplace else?
Well, one, that's the importance of having it here and helping to build that relationship with that community is the number one step. So that, like I said, with Vantage Point Logistics, now that they're already in Columbus, the opportunity for us to get them back up here is probably very, very slim. It could have happened, absolutely. The second is the fact that your economic development office is part of that company's life from the beginning. So we're always looking for their need for the future, and we can take those ideas and then we can say, well, we need to work with developer XYZ or building owner XYZ to truly try to, make a facility ready for that company once they're ready to head that direction.
I see what you're saying. So I would say a tech company or whoever's going to develop out of an entrepreneurial center is a little bit different of an animal than manufacturing. So when this company goes to build a facility, whatever they're going to do you see them building over an industrial park with manufacturing facilities? You do.
Well, I think we have three key areas here where those things can take place. Quite honestly, it's a good question, Chris. We obviously have 1,600 acres that are coming open here. I would hope that we didn't utilize that whole 1,600 acres for just industrial. Right. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for your smaller office space. But we talked about a lot of our employers right now more in the R&D sector. So that's not truly fully industrial at all. Some of these people are going to still need those kind of physical assets in terms of buildings. So I think that area is a good mixing place with 42 going down the middle and Sawmill Parkway going into Powell and Dublin. So I think that's our first key area that we plan for that area appropriately with infrastructure and resources. I think the second area is your downtown. I think that this area still truly offers a lot of assets to those companies. In fact, just in the last 2 years, we've had actually now 4 creative class companies locate in the downtown area. John Tar Creative Studios, we have a small international marketing firm that just kind of snuck in the radar and located in one of the second floor offices in downtown. We have a small web design firm that does statewide work located on South Franklin right now. These are more or less Gen Xers or millennials who really like the atmosphere that a downtown provides. They can walk down and go to that microbrew that I made the joke of earlier and have a beer and then head right straight back to work. Because don't you do coding better when you've had a few beers?
My thoughts exactly right. Because I just can't see a tech company going out to a manufacturing area.
And they won't.
It's just not that vibe.
You're completely correct. Actually, we have a recent example of that. Earlier this year, when we were working with one of the nation's largest crowdfunding companies, they were looking for a place to put a campus. They wanted living space, residential, retail, entertainment, volleyball courts, office, all right there in one area. Well, that is a downtown, and they were very intrigued here, but we didn't have the residential capacity down here to fulfill what they thought would be their need for that project. We tried to show them some areas that were pretty down the Ohio Health area. That was intriguing. But they saw that we're hiring a lot of MIT grads, and a lot of our entrepreneurs that are coming and working on companies with us are MIT grads and so on and so forth. They want more of this environment than being in a 1,600 acre industrial park. And in fact, we took him down there and he's like, well, these are nice buildings, but it's not what we want.
Right.
And I think when we think about this, obviously a lot of this is infill development in the core, not just the core downtown area, but if you go across the river and you take a look at that area in William Street between William and Winter, it's on the river. There's a lot of, I think, underutilized property close enough to the core of the downtown that you could I think, accomplish some of these things in terms of housing and space for these type of entrepreneurs.
In fact, thank you so much for bringing that up, Tom. I mean, we have a group of investors right now that are looking at that East Side Historic District and salivating. How can we redevelop that area? They're kind of seeing it. I mean, it's not obviously nearly as bad as Franklinton in terms of crime and whatnot, but they're kind of seeing that as a Franklinton, an area where downtown continue to expand, create that walkability, the entertainment, the food, but yet still have that campus style environment where these young employees can live, work, eat, and play all in one place and be happy. And going back to the labor statistics, the two largest chunks of labor right now in the city of Delaware are baby boomers and millennials. My generation, smallest Gen Xers, we're caught in the middle. We don't matter. But your baby boomers, I hope I matter to you. The baby boomers obviously are going to be retiring in masses. Actually, I heard a statistic the other day that 10,000 people in the country are retiring per day in this country. So if the baby boomers are leaving the workforce in masses, the people we're really going to be filling with them are not my generation again, darn. But the millennials that are following, and those are the ones that we have to look towards the future. We're doing okay right now, guys. Again, we're happy right now. We're prosperous. But to fulfill the needs of what was in the survey and what this idea of an entrepreneur center truly fulfills the needs of that next generation workforce and doing the things, like you say, preparing our downtown for the next step. And so on and so forth. That's where the opportunity lies.
How is the Entrepreneurial Center going to be promoted? I mean, how's word going to get out? I mean, what's your thoughts there?
I think it's the same way we're really trying to ramp up our marketing and public relations engine with the economic development efforts now. I'll just give you an example. Just the 1 month that we've, and obviously a lot of this is because of it's new and exciting. People didn't see it before. But our new economic development only website, we went from maybe 60 visits per month on our old ED page within the city site to 1,500 visits, unique visits to our ED site. And a lot of that is pushing people to it with social media, good public relations, relationship building. I mean, really, quite honestly, when you look at how entrepreneurs find us and how any business finds us, there's definite resources and relationships that are very key. I had lunch with a banker yesterday, and he said, "How can I help you?" I was like, "Well, you're the number one resource of people finding us as a community. They have clients who are trying to secure money, and they're either expanding or starting a business generally. Or, those are the people we want, right? Real estate people, that's the given, right? Real estate people and developers are the other source of businesses looking here. So I think for especially an entrepreneur center, quite honestly, the banking industry is probably going to be your top in terms of relationships. But I go right now, every month I go to a function. Well, it wasn't held at COSI this week, and I missed it yesterday, but called Wake Up Startup. And it's kind of the, it's a culmination of what has become the entrepreneur culture of Central Ohio. These are young people who are coming, some aren't so young anymore, who are coming in here and really it's almost like a Shark Tank style where they're coming in and presenting their business idea, but they're not asking for money, they're asking for advice and relationships. Do you know somebody that can help me do a marketing plan? Do you know somebody that can help me do X, Y, Z? That's where an entrepreneur center comes into play. And I'll have conversations with these people afterwards and continue to build relationships with them. But right now, they don't see us as being a place where they can get resources. They see an individual who's going to work hard for them, but they don't see us as being the center for where entrepreneurship's happening. In fact, that's where we have to change the paradigm. Right now, they're like, well, gosh, Delaware is so far north. It's like, well, no, not really. And then when you do get them up here, and we have had them up here, I've brought them up here, they're like, wow, that's not so far away. And gosh, look at this downtown. we'll take them to lunch at 1808, whatnot, and be like, they're fascinated. They're fascinated with the culture that we've created. They just don't know about it, going back to your point about communication and marketing and public relations. You got to create that image. In fact, I sent an article to Tom yesterday that was in this week newspaper. Gahanna just did their economic development plan. They paid $90,000 for us. You got yours for free. They paid for me, I guess. But basically, the number one economic development plan is Gahanna has no image. People don't know what Gahanna is. So the number one strategy that comes out of the E-plan is a marketing strategy and trying to create an image. But you mentioned paying for Facebook ads. Should we be doing those things? We should be paying for LinkedIn ads. We should be paying for Facebook ads. I have a proposal to Tom, and he gave me the green light to start doing some Google AdWords advertising to drive even more traffic to our website. So we're moving down that path. The Entrepreneur Center becomes a tool within that economic development plan that gets promoted every day.
One comment that I just want to put out there, I think this is a great plan. I'm definitely very supportive of it. I would not support actually transferring the ownership of that building to a third party, whether that's the CIC or the Port Authority or some nonprofit. I think that you could probably achieve the same kind of effect by leasing it for $1 a year or something along those lines. But when we bought that, it was part of the thought was that it was really a protective purchase, and that if we're committed to keeping the city hall in the downtown more or less forever, that's really our only place that we could eventually expand the city offices. And if we look 20 years down the road, if we're a city of 50,000, we're probably going to need more administrative office space than we currently have. And so we need to, I think, keep that open as an option.
A lease model.
By then, the Entrepreneur Center might need more space to relocate anyway. So
yeah, that does. Yeah, thank you, Andy. That offers a lot of flexibility, and I think that model would work just as well, especially if you're leasing off for a little price, $1 per year, whatever that is. Then you're just relying on whatever entity's running the facility to do the build out.
Sure.
Just like any other retail or whatever model, right? The landlord's not doing the build out, and yeah, it's a good idea.
That we're trying to set up a meeting between the county and Sean, Tom, myself, and Tim, probably in October, and bringing this forward to see how much interest they'd have in partnering in this with us. Another thought I had was the revolving loan fund that we have now in total facelift on our whole downtown. Why not offer that money to people to help start fixing their second stories, so that small businesses might be able to move up there, residential, whatever. And the same idea, they pay part, we pay part, max it out, but just some other kind of incentive to keep that money.
I would like to see that money also start moving out from the core downtown to Lake Street,
Right.
things like that.
I don't know that they would be able to do
I don't-
second-story renovation.
I don't think you can.
I think it's limited to exterior facade.
But facade work on the
You
east
have to
side.
have a
Go back to what you
source
said
of
about-
revenue as far as inventory or something to offset it, in case they went down up.
Yeah, the RLF in its natural state probably isn't the tool, but I completely agree with what you're saying. We need to figure out a way to incentivize that further renovation. Facade program comes from the RLF, but it's also very specific, and the state's given us permission to use it that way. But yeah, exactly. I mean, we just, example of how this has come up recently, we all look at the West End facility there, and it's in a sad state of affairs, and Jim Manus wants to sell the building right now. I had somebody who we've talked to a lot, Zach Price, come in. He's an architect. He's done a lot of short north buildings, and he took a look at it, and he was actually interested in purchasing it, but he ran the numbers, and he's like, for what I have to sink into it financially, I'm only going to make maybe $2,000 a year on the end, and that's not going to pay me back for my investment in that facility. So they said, sorry, Sean, that model's not going to work. And that was considering possibly some sort of RLF facade grant combination. Didn't take into account RLF puts you into prevailing wage, but it just didn't work with that in place. So we do have to figure out what that is, how we do that, and continue that process even into the east side, and continue renovating our buildings down here, make them usable office space, usable second story residential space. We've had 4 couples in the last 2 weeks, empty nesters with wealth who are looking to move down here, and we don't have apartments for them. So, like, well, sorry, guys. I mean, here's the landlords, the numbers for them. You can call them, but as far as I know, we have nothing that, because Andy's taken up one of our spaces. You know, they could move in with you, but.
Well, Blackwell's
It's
doing
not a very big
apartments.
apartment.
Blackwell's supposedly doing apartments with that field round up.
Oh, that's great. Good, good. Another thing, going along the lines with funding, and, you know, I put it in, it was I think a component of Gary's plan, but I didn't put it in here as a thought that, you know, we do take in fees when our industrial projects seek CRAs and so on and so forth. We do take in fees through that, or actually we haven't been, but we should be, and we're allowed to by law. We can divert that money over into providing grants to entrepreneurs to actually start their businesses here, to add a little bit more attraction, to say, you know what, we don't even just have a facility. If you work the program, you can actually tap into some dollars on the back end. So use your larger scale economic development to fund your smaller scale economic development.
Would there be an interest in visiting?
I would.
Go.
I mean, just going up and making arrangements to meet with the elected officials up there and some of the partners and hearing about what they do and how they do it.
I like to know how you got started.
I would, yeah.
And they're all over the country too. There's one out in Boulder, would be nice.
Oh, I'd like to do that.
Tom was a trip. You don't want to go to Wisconsin, Tom? I found the one in Wisconsin.
Yeah, there's one in Wausau.
Any in the warm areas, Phoenix?
Well, I think what, you know, part of the purpose of this discussion was the follow-up from the retreat where Chris asked the question, how does this work? And putting it in more practical terms. And I think what you've heard today indicates that this is viable. I think what we need to do is come back to you with a plan as to how it would work. You know, what the potential sponsors might be, the partners might be, costs.
I love everything. I support 100%. Just the one thing that's always it's in the back of my head is just, you know, when a company is ready to explode,
Where
they
they-
go someplace else and explode. As opposed to,
Well, the
Yeah.
fact is that there's not anything we can do to
I know.
make them stay. And I think that the best thing we can do is to continue focusing not only on economic development, but on all these other things we've been talking about today, focusing on the downtown, making sure that, you know, we have good infrastructure here. And at the end of the day, it's all, you know, there are a lot of things that go into, I mean, just as someone who started a business in Delaware and moved it to Columbus, the reason I did that is because our clients were in Columbus, and it's a type of business where we need a lot of face-to-face interaction with our clients, and it was unreasonable for them to come up here, you know, for a 40-minute meeting, and so we kind of needed to be, you know, blocks away from our clients instead of miles away. So, you know, I think every business is going to look at those types of issues, and they're going to make the right decision for them. I think that, you know, we can do everything right and still lose sometimes, and that's going to happen. But
I just want to make sure that we have
the more things
everything.
we do right,
Right.
the better equipped we are to win when everything else is.
I just want to make sure that we have done everything that we can do, and then it comes down to it.
And I think if you look at it as the region benefits, you know, obviously ultimately we'd like them here, but if they've moved to Columbus, they're still part of our region, and that's equally
Well, the
important.
other thing I would say is that I think that everything that Sean was saying about the downtown, I think is very true. And for the type of businesses that we'd be trying to attract through, you know, some sort of entrepreneur center, how cool the downtown is actually a pretty significant consideration. You know, if you're talking about doing something like app development or you know, things of that nature, it doesn't really matter where you are geographically in most cases. And so it kind of becomes, you know, what sort of resources and incentives are available, and then also where do your employees want to work, and is it a cool enough place that you're going to be able to recruit employees that, you know, and I think that the quality of the downtown being what it is today versus where it was, say, 10 or 15 years ago, I think positions us better to attract the type of businesses Sean's talking about. So I think that the more we can continue to try to support that, I think there really is a very strong economic development component to that. And it's not, I think when we talk about investing in the downtown, it's not just economic development that, great, there's a new restaurant with, 25 new part-time jobs and 5 new full-time jobs. That's great. That's just a type of economic development, but that sort of activity makes the whole downtown more desirable, more attractive to the type of economic activity and the type of business development that I think we're really interested in pursuing. The more high-paying, high-growth potential, white-collar jobs, those types of things.
Which goes back to the very beginning, which is what the residents are looking for.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Soft infrastructure is just as important as hard infrastructure, which means your restaurants, your retail.
Yeah.
And
If you want us to pursue the
Absolutely.
putting together more, okay,
Absolutely.
good. We'll do that.
With a high priority.
Yeah.
Okay.
How we decided this last time we talked about it.
No, I think we talked about, Gary had done that presentation at the retreat, and Chris had asked a question. I wanted more information about it, and that's what you have today. And I think the next step is putting together the plan, actually, how you might fund it, who the partners might be, who might be
Well, I don't think
sponsored.
Jerry gave us a presentation on anything with the history
It was-
of entrepreneurialism.
Yeah, exactly. You remember, there wasn't enough time to, we just did. So I think we'll do is follow it up, get the field trip arranged, give you some additional information, and then come back to you with a plan. The next, probably.
Yeah, when you were in the group, we went on the Boulder.
We're going to Boulder.
Look it up.
Carolyn's going to
Yeah.
Lima. Carolyn's going to Lima.
I like wine. I'll find one in Hawaii for you.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, council.
So we have the last 10 minutes, right? Less than 10.
Well, we know the action steps.
Yeah.
So we can
So
skip
we're-
that. So
So
we're,
we're going
got a
to
motion to adjourn unless somebody else has any other comments.
Well, I guess, do we need to make a motion on our action steps, or are we just gonna kind of leave them out there?
We told them we want the stuff back by December.
You want,
You want it in writing?
I think what I'd like to do is what I can do is follow up and give you the dates, but I want to check with Bill in terms of, I don't want to give you a date that
Right.
the consultant says I can't get you that information, so. I propose.
What I think we ought to do then is, let's say if you could, maybe by end of day Monday, just follow up with us with an email saying, kind of recapping what it is that you think you need to get to us and when.
Okay.
And then if we have anything we want to add to that or correct or
Do it at
modify,
the meeting?
we can do it at
Do
the
it Monday
meeting or
night.
through email.
Okay.
And then that way, there's kind of a
Yep.
written record and,
Right.
And then the Entrepreneurial Center, we need to have the meeting with the county, which will be in October. And then that'll get,
Right. In the meantime, we'll arrange a trip to go up to Lima for those who are interested, take a look at what they've got.
I don't think I can get that plane done by December, though. I'm sorry.
If anyone's interested in seeing Rev 1 in Columbus, generally you can kind of pop in and someone will
Is that a monthly?
give you like a nickel tour.
Yeah, I like to do that too.
Yeah.
Yesterday's Wake Up Startup was actually at Route 1, so I'm not sure if I'm going to have to feature ones there, but you guys could always tag along with me.
Send us out, next time you're going to do something like that, whether, send us all an email and then we can, go hang out at Andy's place,
Yeah.
Which is a nice place, by the way. I have been there, so.
It is.
It's cool. Well, everyone's welcome if you're in the neighborhood. I move to adjourn.
Second.
we are adjourned at 10:20.